We just had a new patch, the Freezing Rush patch. Also, Darkrai has dropped inside Pokemon Unite. Yeehaw, everybody. Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Let's talk about who won and who lost, and then who kind of in this patch. I think it's always good to start out with a winner, and I don't know if I've kept that tradition up, but I'm making it right now, and I'll see if I remember it. I want to talk about Snorlax. Snorlax is a weird one here, but definitely a winner. I did not expect buffs kind of across the board. It has flail buffs, it has yawn buffs, it has block buffs, I said bluffs right there. So I really do think that Snorlax is a defender that has kind of needed some love, given that all of the other defenders are pretty meta, except for, well, we'll talk later. All of the other defenders have a lot going on, and Snorlax is always fine and kind of just in this weird middle ground. I think these are really nice changes for it. Yawn obviously is a very nice buff, given that you might be on a team with a Darkrai, and that can help you do even more damage. So we'll have to see how these change things, but I can tell you from the matches I was playing, I think I won every single Flail Snorlax game we played, which is just a testament to the fact that that build is pretty good, especially into players who don't know how to fight against it, and Snorlax is just a tanky monster right now. Let me hit you with a patch loser here, and that is going to be Charizard. Charizard is not gutted by any means. It still feels like a very strong Pokemon, but from the match I played, while I was doing a lot of damage, I also felt like they took the teeth out of its basic attacks a bit, and you could feel the Unite move charge time increasing. I was even running Energy Amp, and I thought, yeah, you could feel this is taking longer. I'm not immediately back into a fight with another Unite move, which is probably fair because its Unite move is absolutely insane. By no means do I think Char is gutted, but they definitely did a little bit of a number on it to make sure it was not as ridiculous. Now let me talk about a kind of a questionable one. Machamp got a buff. No question that it got a buff for close combat. I love close combat Machamp. It's my favorite way to play Dynamic Punch close combat. It definitely got a buff. Its Unite move, on the other hand, might be a different story. There are elements about its Unite move change that I like and elements about it that I don't. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Machamp's Unite move now will cast immediately. Like the barrage of blows happens immediately. You no longer power up and then start to kind of aim your Unite move. It's just ready to go. You throw it and you catch some enemies and do some damage. This is equal parts good and bad, it feels like. And I wonder if it's actually going to overall help Machamp, but one thing is for sure, and they talked about this in the patch notes, they wanted to remove that feeling of you see Machamp start to get ready for its Unite and then everyone scatters. That in some ways I think is good, but I also think you still have a Unite move that's kind of easy to not get caught in, especially if you're fighting close range with Machamp and you want to throw it. There are often times where your enemies are so close to you that they don't get sort of pulled with your Unite, and they can sort of just exit the sides of your Unite move pretty easily, or just get left by it completely. This also doesn't let you aim it as easily as before, it feels like. In some ways, it's an easier aim. They're right in front of you, you cast it and go. In other ways, you have to sort of set it up differently, and your opponent's just moving slightly means I've found sometimes even harder to land. So it's going to take some getting used to. I would love to hear from you in the comments what you think about it.
Thank you so much for the follow. Oh no, it's a raid.
What is this?
Oh my god.
Oh, we're hearing like a Twitch stream that was up in the background. Sorry, everybody. Someone was getting raided. But I think for me, I'm like 50% it's a buff, 50% it's a nerf. But overall, I might lean towards nerf a little bit. But again, I want to hear from you. Let's talk about another patch winner, and that's Blastoise. Blastoise has needed buffs for a while. I like the direction they went with this. They went with some survivability. They also gave it a little bit of cooldowns on its tank build and some real insane tankiness on Rapid Spin Plus. They did something weird, and from what I understand, the math court has noticed this. They actually put in the scaling on its defensive stats wrong. So right now we're in sort of this middle ground where the buff really takes effect after you hit level 9, but before then your stats are actually slightly worse on your defenses. It's kind of a mess, and it looks like they just input some of the information wrong. I'm sure they will change that with the next bug fix patch. You're still going to get more defenses as the game progresses, and you get all of the other changes to Blastoise. No question, it needed buffs. It got some, and I like this. They went more focused on it being a tank, which I think is great. Let's talk about a quick winner, and that's Lucario. I don't think this is a huge buff, but a cooldown reduction on a move that when you miss is pretty devastating is actually really nice for Lucario. I think Lucario mains are going to enjoy this. I don't think this is going to move the needle too much one way or another though. But a buff like this is nice, especially to a moveset that requires a lot of skill. I'm sure there are a small amount of players that are very happy. Here's a loser of this patch, and that's Delphox. Delphox actually, I think, deserved to lose this patch in another way. I'm surprised that the thing they were concerned with was Delphox's damage, rather than Fire Spin being one of the most annoying moves in the game, but here we are. Delphox has reduced damage on its 2 big damaging moves. I think this is obviously a negative for Delphox, but I don't think it hurts it too much. Again, though, taking away some of the damage might make some of the other mages, one who got a really nice buff in my opinion, a lot more exciting. Here's one that I kind of put in the category, but I'm actually going to slightly move it towards winner. Look, I understand Armarouge got nerfs. It did get nerfs. I don't think it got nerfed that bad. That's what it feels like to me when I've played it. I've played both sort of premier builds with it, the ranged build as well as Fire Spin Flame Charge. And I thought the ranged build felt great still. In fact, it got kind of a slight nerf buff. And then Flame Charge Fire Spin got a nerf, but it doesn't feel that considerable. One thing for sure, Flame Charge is nerfed. Flame Charge is like the biggest nerf. Fire Spin is nerfed, but it's kind of reworked in an interesting way. So it's focused more on shields, and you've lost the natural defenses that you gained. This is probably overall a nerf, right? But it doesn't feel that egregious. And playing it, I felt like I had very similar survivability to what I had before, but yes, it was toned down. In that sense, I think Armarouge is kind of a winner here in this patch. It could have gotten gutted a lot more than this. I think it's still a top tier Pokemon. Another for me is Urshifu. I think this is probably a little bit of a nerf, a little bit. It got some damage increase in exchange for some cooldown. If you knew how to play it correctly and you had a very cheesy build, you could kind of have infinite surging strikes, and they wanted to stay away from that, so they've sort of taken that away, but given it some damage to compensate. I don't think this is going to hurt this Pokemon too much unless we find out that everyone was just cheesing the full cooldown build, which, hey, maybe that's what was going on, but I think this is kind of a fair trade-off so that the cheesy build isn't as good, but the build that you still want to play, the Rapid Strike build, is still very solid. It's just not a particular version of kind of eye-rolly, you know, energy amp, black emblems thing going on. I'll talk about a couple patch losers. I want to talk about Gyarados, and I want to talk about Mamoswine. I don't think this has destroyed Gyarados or Mamoswine, which is good. Gyarados probably got hit a little harder than Mamo, and to be fair, it was crushing it. Mamo just recently won Worlds, so I understand that they might want to tone it back a little bit. The cooldown on Earthquake, I think, makes a lot of sense, even though you'll still be able to make huge plays with it. I don't think this is going to make Mamo or Gyarados irrelevant. Gary might be a little closer, but I still think it's quite good. Now on to a patch winner, and that's Zoroark. Look, Zoroark is one of those Pokemon that I hate the idea that they could buff this thing, because in the hands of a really skilled player, Zoroark is amazing. It's just such a good Pokemon, and giving it a little more damage on Fate, giving it some cooldown reduction, it's going to let those high skill players run a bit of amok. However, it really didn't see a lot of play recently, so I do understand that they want to tune it up a bit. Here's sort of a patch loser, but sort of a and that's Dragonite. I don't think these changes hurt Dragonite too much. Dragonite was seeing a lot more play in the eastern regions than it was in the west, and I think they've kind of figured this Pokemon out a little bit more. These are probably fair nerfs for it, and I don't think it has destroyed it at all. Here's a patch loser, Cramorant. You know Pokemon Unite is back, baby, when Cramorant gets a nerf out of nowhere. Was Cram good? Yeah. Did Cram deserve a nerf? Apparently, it always does. And you know Pokemon Unite is back to its thing when Cramorant gets nerfed out of the blue. Here are a couple of patch winners, and it's because they didn't get messed with, and that is Snorlax, which definitely could receive more nerfs, and Pikachu. Pikachu is one that I'm not super stressed about not receiving a nerf, but I know a lot of the community was surprised we didn't see Pikachu nerfs. I think Pikachu's in a really great spot, and I'm actually okay with it not receiving a ton of nerfs, but for a lot of people, it dodged some big nerfs here. So Snorlax and Pikachu, they miss you on this one. And now let's talk about a couple losers. Falinks, I think, is a loser. This Pokemon does need to be tuned up. They kind of left it alone. I do not think it's terrible or anything like that, but I think they nerfed it and left it without a lot of options to succeed, and now, okay, that's where Falinks is. And one of the biggest losers has to be Lapras. This is the Freezing Rush patch. Lapras needs buffs, and Lapras got nothing. It's kind of funny that this is what the patch is named. It's Freezing Rush, and we nerf Mamoswine, and we don't buff Lapras. Like, okay, I guess that's a Freezing Rush for everybody out there. Sorry, Lapras. Maybe next time, buddy. And now, before we get our winner of the patch, in my opinion, I'm gonna get our loser of the patch. And this is a weird one, but I really do think Dragapult's nerf is out of freaking nowhere. This Pokemon did not see comp play. This Pokemon did not have a high win rate. This build was a sub 50% win rate build, and it was not a high pick rate Pokemon. The only thing I can assume is this Pokemon was doing very, very, very well in low ranks because low ranked players were getting caught by it. You get caught by it a few times and it was steamrolling games. This feels like one of those nerfs that unfortunately was, well, fortunately or unfortunately, look, they have to balance the game for all of the people playing it, but this was one of those nerfs that feels like it was dictated more by some of the play you would see in some of the lower ranks rather than some of the play you would see in the higher ranks. I think it was uncalled for, but here we are. I'm sorry, Dragapult. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. And finally, our patch winner, for me, it's Alolan Ninetails. The Mage build got a cooldown reduction. It was already doing well. You would see teams like Team YT in the final stretch last year playing very well with it. Now it also received defensive buffs. So it's going to be able to survive longer in some of these encounters. If you're running the Aurora Veil build, being inside Aurora Veil is even better now because you have the natural damage reduction, you have your boosteds, and you have increased defenses as the match goes on. These are awesome buffs. Also, Snow Warning activates more often, and you'll see it in game. It's going all the time. You're finding enemies more often. You're picking up weird KOs on wild Pokemon. You're just being more disruptive with the Alolan Ninetales, and for me, it is the patch winner. All right, adding a quick addition to this list, given what has happened this morning. This is a different patch, essentially. But yes, there was a huge buff to Darkrai. It was not part of the Freezing Rush patch, but it would be crazy not to mention it in this video at this point. A massive winner of this patch, probably rocketing it from B tier on its best build and F tier on its worst build to an S tier Pokemon. Darkrai was buffed across the board. It had like one move that wasn't buffed, which was a starter move. So yeah. Huge winner of its own individual emergency nerf patch. Okay, I felt like I had to add that in before I put this video up. There we go. But I would love to hear from you. Who do you think won? Who do you think lost? And who are you just shocked that they didn't buff or nerf? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I love you, and I'll see y'all next time. Oh, one last thing. If you've already left a comment, if you want to leave one more, I have a question. Have you seen anyone with that new Gengar Hollowware in-game? I haven't seen a single person. Sylveon, I saw day one, which I kind of expected. Sylveon's insanely popular, but I haven't seen one Gengar, and I'm curious. All right, love you guys.